In the past couple of years, male seiyuu have been impressing everyone with their singing skills. Some of them are on a jaw-dropping high level of skill and as such have made solo debuts, but there is still a whole lot of talent that is not worried about making a solo debut or has been more active in 2D music projects, and yet they have been impressing everyone with their performances in cover album projects. In this episode, let's talk about some of the cover projects that seiyuu have been a part of and some of the most iconic performances. Let's kick off this episode of SEIYUU Lounge. Welcome to SEIYUU Lounge. I am your host Vanessa, and today's topic is male seiyuu covering songs by popular J-pop singers. This is a topic suggested by Carol in the 100th episode survey. The message was the following: seiyuus covering other seiyuus or projects' songs. Given how broad the subject is, let's talk about projects in which seiyuu covered songs by popular Japanese singers. And by the end of this episode, I'll suggest a couple of songs for you to check because those performances were outstanding. Some may argue even better than the original versions. Seiyuu covering music by J-pop artists. Is this a new thing? This is not a new thing, that's for sure, however it is not necessarily an old thing either. Since the early 2000s, seiyuu have been active singing character songs, and since the early 10s, they've been part of 2D music projects. As we talked about before when you and I revisited the history of seiyuu units, seiyuu have been singing since the 70s, however the big trend only started in the early 10s. That trend put some seiyuu in the spotlight for their singing skills, and thus, there have been several projects all about having your favorite voices covering popular J-pop songs. Of course, there have been some projects in the noughties, but as of late, Avex, Universal Music Japan, and K-Lab have both focused a lot on having seiyuu perform cover songs. Disney has also been quite active in bringing to the spotlight some of the most interesting singers among seiyuu to perform iconic Disney movie songs. All this to say, what started almost 20 years ago has not changed a lot. Music labels see talents in seiyuu bring in their fans, and the projects end up selling quite well. That's a recipe for success. Usually, how good are the cover songs by seiyuu? Now, that's a big and interesting question. Knowing how most seiyuu have genuinely good singing skills, some of them with background as musicians, composers or performers, it is no surprise that most of the times, the cover songs by seiyuu sound really well. There have been some covers that were not as good in some projects, namely the Recollection project. This project brought in a mix of seiyuu with good singing skills, but also some seiyuu that are popular but not really particularly gifted as singers. This gave way to some awesome covers and others that didn't really feel right because the vocals were off by a mile. Of course, this is bound to happen more and more. Cover projects are usually made with popular voices chosen to cover those songs and give them a new life. It's not necessarily about skill nowadays, but more about bringing popularity to music that may no longer have it. Still, as I said a couple of seconds ago, most covers by seiyuu are of a really high quality. They put in the effort to not sound bad and not pale in comparison with the original performer. And on some occasions there have been seiyuu that actually sounded better than the original artists for the songs they were covering. This is rare, but it happened most recently with Yumake's cover of Gackt's Vanilla. To sum this up, the cover songs by seiyuu are usually good, and if you are familiar with Japanese pop music, from the noughties up until now, you'll thoroughly enjoy the covers projects I'll be talking about. projects in which SEIYUU have covered songs by J-pop and J-rock artists. Over the years, there have been plenty of interesting cover projects, groups that focus on covering songs, or even projects that from time to time cover songs by popular J-rock and J-pop artists. There is no shortage of projects that have cover songs performed by SEIYUU. As such, I'll cover some of those in this episode, and will of course not cover the Disney Koe no Ojisama CDs, as that is a different thing from all these projects, as it covers movie songs rather than J-pop music itself. Still, if you are curious about it, I welcome you to check those CDs, as those are filled with 90s and noughties nostalgia in the performances. Now let's check some of the projects or groups that have covered or are still covering J-pop and J-rock artists. MOE since 2011. When Carol sent the topic for this episode, MOE was the first group I thought about. The group, founded in 2011 by Wataru Hatano and Takuma Terashima, has been for over a decade releasing cover song albums as well as covering each other's songs as solo artists. The duo is all about covering songs that were featured in anime series over the years, covering songs from the 70s up until now, and even with Hatano and Terashima covering each other's songs as solo artists in their most recent CD releases as MOE. While they are not particularly popular and not many people actually knows about MOE, the group has released awesome covers of songs featured in anime series such as Haikyuu, Mobile Suit Gundam, Sakura Wars 3, Anohana, and more. On the vocal end, you can expect a lot of passion from Hatano and Terashima, as both love anime songs, and they are actually the ones choosing the songs they will be covering for those CDs. Therefore, you know you're in for a treat when they are originally fans of such songs. Platinum Voice Todoketai Utagaru from 2012. Man, it's been years since I've revisited this project, and yet, to this day, it is one of the best cover song projects I ever listened to, and one of the best to be launched featuring SEIYUU on the vocals. Platinum Voice Todoketai Utagaru was a project launched by Universal Music Japan that featured some of the hottest SEIYUU in the early 10s, covering songs by Japanese artists from the 80s up until the late noughties. Among some of the most exciting covers were Junichi Suabe's Giratai by Anzen Chitai, Kenji Nojima's Kiseki by Green, and Ken's Akai Sweet Pea by Seiko Matsuda. Fans can find songs covered by Kazuhiko Inoue, Masaya Matsukaze, Ryotaro Okyayu, Kenji Nojima, Junichi Suabe, Ken, Toru Furuya, and Yuya Uchida. I remember this as the first cover songs album by SEIYUU that I came across. The Hand That Feeds HQ was only 2 years old, and I was still uncovering a lot of the talent SEIYUU had on the vocal end when I found this CD and completely fell in love with Junichi Suabe's vocals, as well as got to know about veterans I was not even aware had singing careers or that were genuinely solid singers. With that being said, this CD is quite nostalgic for me, yet as I revisited for this episode, I found that the quality of those performances still holds up until this very day. It is quite impressive how well performed and recorded were those performances. Double Dare covers from 2017. In 2017, the internet radio station Radio Tomo announced the release of Double Dare Covers project. This project featured its radio duos at that time, challenging themselves by covering some of J-pop's greatest hits. Yusuke Shirai and Masahiro Yamanaka from Iris Quartz, Kentito and Yoshiki Nakajima from Yumeraji, Hidenori Takahashi and Daiki Hamano from Voyage Wave, Yoshitaka Yamaya and Tomohito Takatsuka from Cafe Gura, and Junta Terashima and Kengo Kawanishi from Waraji were the duos in charge of the covers. The project had its interesting covers with, for example, Hidenori Takahashi and Daiki Hamano covering Jiratai, song that had been covered in the Platinum Voice project, Kentito and Yoshiki Nakajima covering Gackt's Vanilla and Tatsuro Yamashita's classic city pop tune Kimi no Koe ni Koishiteru. From J-pop classics to city pop and J-pop dance tunes, the Double Dare cover CD is a treat, featuring some of the most exciting covers, some of those better than the originals, which is to say, Kentito and Yoshiki Nakajima's take on Gackt's Vanilla is a banger. If you haven't checked this covers project, you have to. Woven songs from 2021. It would take a couple of years until male seiyuu would be called to work in another covers album project. In 2021, Universal Music Japan was back for more and brought Kentito, Junichi Suabe and Yuki Kaji to its Woven Songs project. Instead of having each seiyuu perform a song, something commonly done for this type of project, Universal Music Japan did something different. Each seiyuu was to sing a set of songs under a specific theme. Each seiyuu covered 5 songs by J-pop and J-rock artists from the 80s up until the very early 10s under the themes of Youth by Kentito, Stories by Yuki Kaji, and Love by Junichi Suabe. This covers collection album series also included performances by female seiyuu, so if you also enjoy female seiyuu, this is a good collection for you to visit. Aopella, since 2021. Although Aopella isn't necessarily a cover project, there have been a couple of cover songs released by its 2 flagship groups, Lil Happy and Fame. Actually, even the new group, Vedlip, has released a cover of its own. More than me pointing you out to a specific CD, I'll add that the franchise, usually when it is time to release a new CD, releases a cover song by its groups. So there is always something to look forward to every time the franchise announces a new CD release, of course, besides waiting for that CD to drop. The covers have a unique touch as the songs are covered solely by voice. We're talking about an a cappella music project, so it is expected. Something that helps breathe new life to hit J-pop tunes or even share the stage with a cappella legends such as the Gospelers. If you love seiyuu and their voices, and the technicality and skills they have impress you, then do check the covers made by all groups in this franchise, which is to say, Lil Happy, Fame and Vedlip. Those are like a whole new world in the music industry. Yotsuba Ongaku Gakuin from 2021. In 2021, Yotsuba Ongaku Gakuin, group consisting of Daisuke Ono, Hisayoshi Suganuma, Junji Majima and Takayuki Kondo, also members of Project Daba, and hosts of the Abema TV show of the same name, released the covers album. In the CD Vacances, listeners can find covers of iconic songs by pop, rock and hip-hop artists such as Glay, Zebra, Tsukima Switch, among many others. While this CD may go under the radar for many, it is at least recommended to check it out for Takayuki Kondo's cover of Zebra's classic hip-hop tune, Street Dreams. From Argoavis franchise from, let's say, 2021. Argoavis cover collection is a good example of a cover album focused on bringing together seiyuu, to the groups, in this case bands, and the original artists together. Since the very start, the From Argoavis franchise has been collaborating with artists such as Sid and Rockies is Punked to create music for its own bands. And to showcase the talents, sound and colors of each band, especially in the early stages of each one, cover songs were chosen as the medium to let everyone know what was to come. In 2021, the franchise compiled the cover songs that all bands performed up until then and released a special double album, including those. Listeners can find covers of songs by Overworld, Abingdon Boys School, Old Codex, Sid, Green, Sekai no Owari, among many more. Recollection hit song cover series featuring voice actors from 2022. Perhaps one of the most ambitious cover projects in the last couple of years is Recollection hit song cover series featuring voice actors. The project launched by Avex in 2022 brought an interesting lineup that mixes experience with popularity and skill, giving way to performances covering 3 decades of J-pop and rock. The project brought Shintaro Asanuma, Shoyachiba, Myuirino, Shokarino, Yuki Kaji, Tetsuya Kakihara, Kensho Ono, Gakuto Kajiwara, Masakazu Morita, and more to the spotlight, covering songs from the 90s up until the 10s. The Recollection CDs were well received by fans, selling surprisingly well, which prompted Avex to announce a live show in which some of the SEIYUU featured on those CDs will be able to cover the songs live for everyone's enjoyment. If you want to go down the memory lane with songs that were never covered by SEIYUU before, there are some exceptions. The 3 CDs in the Recollection hit song cover series featuring voice actors project are well worth checking out. Suggestions. Because I can't just talk about the projects without suggesting some prime covers from those, I bring you 4 songs that you should really check because the SEIYUU that took over did it almost as well as the original performer, or at times they added their own touch and made the song theirs, or in a unique twist, they performed the song even better than the original artist. So let's talk about those songs. Junichi Suabe with Giratai. This is an original song by Anzen Chitai from 1987. When you talk about SEIYUU that are needlessly sexy, especially if you focus on their natural voice, Junichi Suabe has to be your first choice. Really. While anime fans know him for playing rough and tough roles, fans of 2D music projects and otome games do know that Suabe is well known for his suave voice and for being effortlessly sexy in his performances. Well, if that wasn't enough for your heart to deal with, how about Junichi Suabe performing the 1987 classy sexy tune Giratai? The original track was released well into the late 80s, when pop music in Japan was starting to stray away from city pop and embracing synthwave and the new romantic style from the UK from bands such as Duran Duran. To this day, Anzen Chitai's Giratai still stands as one of the sexiest, simultaneously classiest songs released by a Japanese artist. Let me tell you, this cover is the perfect example of a song well remade, tweaking little things about the original that made it sound dated in 2012 and brought Junichi Suabe to the stage to deliver what I feel is one of the most suggestive performances by a male SEIYUU to date. Junichi Suabe made this song his song. There's something about his performance that is hypnotizing for me, and it lies with the emotions Suabe put into his performance. It feels like he better fleshed out the emotions in the original, and you can really feel the desire and passion in this performance. It's so mesmerizing that it ends up being dangerous. You make, or basically Kentito and Yoshiki Nakajima, with Vanilla, which is an original song by Gact from 2000. This is an insane cover of a song that wasn't necessarily technical in its original version, but ended up becoming ridiculously technical as soon as Yumake took over the reins to cover it for Double Dare covers. Yoshiki Nakajima is a well-known Gact fanboy, and you can tell how he even got Gact's mannerisms when performing the song. He is leading the charge, blasting a powerful vibrato, smoothly tackling the falsetto, and going for those crazy dual-tone notes in the chorus while harmonizing with Kentito. Kentito has absolute control in his vocals, something that shows in the way he harmonizes with Nakajima, as well as how smoothly he goes through all the technical parts in the performance. The high notes, the consistent use of vibrato, the occasional falsetto, for a brief second sounding like he's doubling his tone, and even the head voice. And when Nakajima and Ito get that iconic high note in head voice with a vibrato twist, a staple in GACT's performances, you know you're listening to what is quite possibly one of the best covers of this classic rock tune, and easily a performance that rivals the original, which isn't something easy to achieve. Phantom Iris with Uso, which is a song by Sid or Shido, which was released in 2009. Sid has been leaving its mark as a unique band that has started its path in visual K-rock, maturing along the way to becoming one of the most exciting acid jazz bands in Japan. Uso is a song part of the band's iconic album Hikari. The original song was marked by a dash of beauty given by the strings alongside the warm acoustic guitars. Larger-than-life bassline and riveting drums completed the set. Leading the way is Mao's raspy tenor vocals taking you on a beautiful journey. Now for this cover, Phantom Iris, led by Arthur Lounsbury as Felix, brought a different life to this classic tune. Arthur's singing style screams at you in a different way from Mao, which is quite interesting. While the instrumental is pretty much unchanged from the original track, well, the bass line is clearly softer in this one than in the original, the vocals did change quite a bit. Arthur brings a twinge of pain to this nostalgia-filled track, with that showing in the use of vibrato as well as the raspier takes on some words in the lyrics, something in which he made sure to give his own twist. What you get is a performance that, while sounding softer as a whole, sounds more pained. It is as if Arthur took the story in the lyrics, performed those as the protagonist, but also added his own feelings about the story in that performance. Given how insanely difficult it is to even mimic Mao's style of performance and tone, Arthur did an amazing job covering this song. Certainly one worth checking out. Fame with Hakujitsu, which is an original song by King Gnu, released in 2019. Fame's cover of King Gnu's Hakujitsu is unlike any other cover in this suggestions corner. And why is that? Because this is an a cappella cover. There are no changes to the instrumental, there is no instrumental to begin with. The focus is entirely on the vocals and how a group covering bass up to tenor covers a song that was primarily performed by a true tenor in a ridiculously high key. What happens in this cover is that Fame takes King Gnu's jazz and hip-hop influences, easily noticeable if you listen to the original song, and incorporates those in their vocals. As a result, the beatboxing by Shugo Nakamura gives it a hip-hop twist. The powerful bass line by Daiki Hamano confers a jazz touch, and then the ensemble vocals bring a bit of gospel and R&B to the spotlight. At moments, there are glimpses of barbershop a cappella influences in this performance, which is quite impressive. This is a unique take on the original track, focusing more on having the voice flashing out emotions and influences, while at the same time being a pure showcase of singing mastery by all members of Fame. SEIYUU covering songs by J-pop artists is something that, in the past decade, has been done with more frequency than ever before. However, these projects are still very few. I know I've mentioned some projects or groups that have been covering songs by J-pop and J-rock artists, but there is much more for you to discover. Kaba, group featuring some of the members of Project Daba, was all about releasing cover songs. Kosuke Toriumi released the covers album in 2022, and from time to time, there are 2D groups that, a bit like the Argoavis franchise, release cover albums or just cover songs to showcase the talents of their SEIYUU cast or of their groups as a whole. And truth is, the more you look for those kinds of projects, the more content you find, so if you are the type of person that enjoys listening to J-pop and J-rock tunes, with the twist given by your favorite SEIYUU, then there's a lot to check, starting from the projects I highlighted in this episode. And as far as SEIYUU covering each other's songs goes, it's not as easy to happen as these big cover album projects. Negotiations between music labels to get the rights to songs are easier for cover albums. SEIYUU find themselves in a grey area in which covering each other's songs is not common. Music labels are much less cooperative with each other, and it seems SEIYUU are yet to be comfortable featuring on each other's songs, much less covering each other's songs. I believe it is a matter of time until something like this happens, at least within the same music label. I was just thinking how awesome would it be for Mamoru Miyano, for example, to have a covers album to be released featuring performances by Shota Oi, Yumuchida, or even female SEIYUU signed to King Records. But it is, as I said, it is still quite far away from happening in full force. Until then, we can enjoy the occasional and rare cover of SEIYUU artists' songs by other SEIYUU. Now tell me, do you like it when SEIYUU are invited for cover album projects? And do you have a cover song by a male SEIYUU that you love? Share those suggestions with everyone in the comments on YouTube. And remember, leave your comments as complex or as simple as they may be, and you can be featured on upcoming episodes of SEIYUU Lounge. Hit the subscribe button if you enjoyed this episode and don't want to miss the hand that feeds HQ's weekly male SEIYUU and music related content. I'll return next week with another episode of SEIYUU Lounge. Thank you for listening and see you guys around.